The restaurant was filled with the low hum of polished conversation, the soft clink of silverware, and the muted confidence of people who never checked prices on the menu. It was one of those places where money spoke quietly but ruled everything. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, waiters moved like shadows, and every table held power in one form or another. In the center of it all sat a man everyone recognized, even if they pretended not to stare. Nathaniel Cross, billionaire, tech giant, a name that moved markets with a single sentence. Across from him sat his son, 8 years old, small in a chair far too big for him. His name was Oliver, and Oliver was screaming, not crying, not whining, screaming, sharp, panicked, desperate sounds that sliced through the room like broken glass. His hands pressed hard against his ears, his body rocking violently as if the world itself had turned hostile. Plates froze mid-air. Conversations died. Eyes turned, some with curiosity, others with irritation. A woman at a nearby table sighed loudly. A man whispered something about control. Nathaniel felt every stare like a physical blow. He leaned forward, voice tight, trying to stay calm. "Oliver, it's okay. It's okay. Just breathe, son." But Oliver couldn't hear him. The noise, the lights, the unfamiliar smells, they were too much. His autism made moments like this terrifying, not just uncomfortable. His screams grew louder, more frantic, his chair scraping against the marble floor as his legs kicked. A manager appeared almost instantly, face stretched into a polite but strained smile. "Sir," he said carefully, "perhaps this isn't the best environment for the child right now." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. Leave. Take the problem elsewhere. Even his money couldn't buy patience. Before he could respond, a young waitress noticed something everyone else missed. Her name was Elena. She had been refilling water glasses near the back, watching quietly. She didn't see a disruption. She saw fear. Raw, uncontrollable fear in a child who didn't understand why the world suddenly felt like an attack. While others looked away, embarrassed or annoyed, Elena stepped forward, slowly, no sudden movements, no words at first. She knelt beside Oliver's chair, putting herself at his level, ignoring the billionaire, the manager, the room full of judgment. From her apron, she pulled out something unexpected, a small folded napkin, creased and worn. She placed it gently on the table and began folding it, once, twice, again. Oliver's screams didn't stop immediately, but they cracked, just slightly. Elena didn't rush. She folded the napkin into a simple shape, then another. Her hands moved with calm certainty, as if she had done this 100 times before. Then, in a soft voice meant only for him, she spoke. "Red lights are loud," she whispered, "but paper is quiet." Oliver's rocking slowed. One hand slipped away from his ear. His eyes, wet and unfocused, dropped to the napkin. The entire restaurant held its breath. Nathaniel stared, stunned. No one had ever approached his son like this before. No fear, no pity, just understanding. And in that moment, something inside the billionaire began to crack. Something money had never been able to fix. Rested between Elena's fingers like something fragile, almost sacred. She folded it again, carefully aligning the edges, then unfolded it and smoothed it flat against the table. She didn't look at Nathaniel. She didn't look at the manager hovering nearby. Her entire focus was on Oliver, the way his chest rose too fast, the way his fingers twitched, the way his eyes darted as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. "Do you want to help me?" she asked softly, sliding the napkin a few inches closer to him. For a long second, Oliver didn't move. The restaurant was still painfully loud, even in its silence. Forks paused, glasses hovered. People watched, pretending not to. Nathaniel felt his heart pounding in his ears, torn between fear and hope. He had seen this before, moments when people tried to help, failed, and only made things worse. But Elena didn't rush. She folded another napkin beside the first one, mirroring the same slow movements. No instructions, no pressure, just an invitation. Oliver's rocking slowed again. His breathing stuttered, then steadied slightly. His hand, still trembling, reached out. Not all the way, just enough for his fingertips to brush the edge of the paper. He flinched at the sound it made, then froze. "It's okay," Elena whispered. "It's just paper. Paper doesn't shout." Something shifted. Oliver picked up the napkin. The scream stopped. Not suddenly. It faded, breaking into soft, uneven breaths. His shoulders sagged as if he had been holding up the sky and finally allowed it to fall. The room exhaled with him. Nathaniel swallowed hard. His eyes burned, and he hated himself for it. He had hired therapists, flown specialists in from 3 countries, built quiet rooms and customized schedules, and yet a waitress with a napkin had reached his son in seconds. The manager cleared his throat, unsure now whether to intervene or disappear. Elena glanced up for the first time, her eyes meeting Nathaniel's. There was no judgment in them, no awe, just calm understanding. "He's overwhelmed," she said gently. "The lights are bright, the ceiling echoes, and people keep watching. That feels like being trapped." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "He doesn't do well with unpredictability." Elena smiled faintly. "Neither do most adults. They just hide it better." Oliver folded the napkin once, then again. His hands still shook, but now they were working, focused, purposeful. Elena quietly slid a small sugar packet toward him. "Lines help," she said. "Straight things, order, when the world feels messy." Oliver began arranging the packets carefully, one beside the other, his breathing now almost normal. A woman at a nearby table whispered something, her tone sharp. "Why bring a child like that here?" Nathaniel heard it. Elena did too. Elena stood up slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't glare. She simply turned slightly, just enough for her words to reach the room. "He's not like that," she said calmly. "He's scared. There's a difference." Silence crashed down harder than any scream. Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not anger, not embarrassment, gratitude. Pure and painful. "Thank you," he said quietly. Elena nodded once. "You're welcome." But as she turned back to Oliver, she missed the way Nathaniel studied her, not as a waitress, not as an employee, but as someone who had just done what an entire room of wealth and power could not. And somewhere deep inside him, a question began to form. Who is she, and why does she understand my son better than anyone ever has? Nathaniel remained seated long after the immediate crisis passed. Oliver was calm now, quietly lining up sugar packets with careful precision, occasionally glancing at Elena, as if checking that she was still there. Each time she met his eyes and gave a small nod, his shoulders loosened a little more. Nathaniel noticed everything. He noticed how Elena didn't hover, didn't crowd his son. She kept the right distance, close enough to feel safe, far enough to respect Oliver's space. He noticed how she spoke only when necessary, and how her voice never changed pitch, never carried urgency or pity. It was the voice of someone who had learned patience the hard way. The restaurant slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed in cautious murmurs. Plates moved again. But the air had changed. People were no longer staring with irritation. Now it was curiosity, discomfort, even guilt. Nathaniel finally stood. "Oliver," he said softly, "I'm going to speak to the manager. I'll be right here." Oliver didn't answer, but he nodded once, his fingers still aligned with the packets. Nathaniel approached Elena. Up close, she looked tired, not physically, but in the way people look when they've carried responsibility for far too long. Her uniform was simple, her shoes worn. Nothing about her suggested importance. And yet, she had just commanded an entire room without raising her voice. "You handled that better than any professional I've ever hired," Nathaniel said. Elena shook her head gently. "I wasn't handling anything, I was listening." He paused. "How do you know what to do?" For the first time, her calm wavered, just slightly. "My brother," she said after a moment. "He was autistic. Loud places were hard. People thought he was difficult. He wasn't. He was overwhelmed." Nathaniel felt the words settle heavily. "Was?" Elena nodded. "He passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "So am I," she replied. Then she straightened, the waitress returning to her posture. "Can I get you anything else?" Nathaniel almost smiled at the normalcy of the question. Almost. Before he could answer, the manager appeared again, his expression strained. "Sir, we apologize for the disturbance earlier. If you'd prefer, we can move you to a private room." Nathaniel glanced back at Oliver. The boy had stopped arranging packets and was now watching Elena wipe the counter with slow, repetitive motions. "No," Nathaniel said firmly. "We'll stay here." The manager hesitated. "Sir, some guests—" "Can leave," Nathaniel finished calmly. "My son is not a disturbance." The manager swallowed and nodded. "Of course." Elena looked at Nathaniel, something unreadable passing through her eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or surprise. A few minutes later, the food arrived, plain, exactly as requested. Oliver inspected the plate, then took a small bite. His face didn't change, but he kept eating, which, for Nathaniel, was victory. As Elena turned to leave, Oliver spoke. "Paper is quiet," he said. The words were soft, almost swallowed by the room. Elena froze. Slowly she turned back. "Yes," she said gently. "It is?" Oliver looked up at her. "You're quiet, too." Something in Elena's expression cracked, just for a second. She crouched slightly to be closer to his eye level. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot." Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. Oliver rarely spoke to strangers. When he did, it mattered. After they finished eating, Nathaniel reached for his wallet. The bill was modest. He slid a tip onto the table, then paused, added more, then more again. Finally, he stopped himself. Money felt insufficient. "Elena," he said as she passed, "what are your hours tomorrow?" She blinked, surprised. I usually work mornings." "I'd like to talk," he said. "Not here. Somewhere quieter. About a job." Her brow furrowed. "I already have one." "I know," Nathaniel said. "But this one comes with better hours, better pay, and one condition." She waited. "You don't change how you treat my son." The room seemed to fade around them. Elena looked back at Oliver, who was now folding his napkin again, perfectly calm. Then she looked at Nathaniel, and for the first time that day, she smiled, not politely, not professionally, but with genuine warmth. "Let's talk," she said. Nathaniel didn't know it yet, but that moment, that quiet agreement, was about to change all of their lives. The next morning felt different for Nathaniel in a way he couldn't quite explain. His penthouse apartment, usually silent and sterile, echoed with the faint hum of the city below. Oliver sat at the dining table, methodically arranging his colored pencils by shade, blues to greens, greens to yellows. Nathaniel watched from a distance, thinking about the waitress from the diner, Elena. At exactly 9 o'clock there was a soft knock at the door, not rushed, not hesitant, just calm. Nathaniel opened it to find Elena standing there, dressed simply, no uniform this time. Her hair was tied back neatly, and she held a small notebook against her chest, like armor. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for asking," she replied. They didn't shake hands. Neither felt the need. Nathaniel gestured inside. "Oliver is in the dining room. You can take your time." Elena stepped in slowly, allowing herself to adjust to the space. The high ceilings, the polished floors, the quiet. It was the opposite of the diner. Oliver noticed her almost immediately. He looked up, his pencil pausing mid-air. "You're early," he said. Elena smiled softly. "I like being early. It gives the room time to get used to me." Oliver considered this, then nodded and returned to his pencils. Nathaniel watched in disbelief. They moved to the living room, keeping their voices low. "I'm not offering you charity," Nathaniel began, "and I'm not looking for a nanny. Oliver already has specialists, therapists, tutors, the best money can buy." Elena listened without interrupting. "But none of them," he continued, "make him feel safe in the way you did yesterday." She exhaled slowly. "Safety doesn't come from training. It comes from respect." Nathaniel's gaze dropped. "That's what I'm missing." Elena hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Before I agree to anything, I need to understand something. Why are you really asking me to be here?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, looking out at the skyline that had once felt like proof of his success. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said. "She understood Oliver better than anyone. After she was gone, I tried to replace her presence with experts, structure, rules, schedules." He turned back to Elena. "But Oliver doesn't need someone to fix him. He needs someone to see him." Elena nodded once. "Then I'll stay, on one condition." Nathaniel met her eyes. "Name it." "I don't want power over him," she said, "and I don't want authority. If Oliver says no, it means no." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "Agreed." They returned to the dining table. Elena sat across from Oliver, not guiding, not correcting, just observing. When he pushed a pencil out of line, she didn't fix it. When he hummed softly, she didn't shush him. After a while, Oliver slid a blue pencil toward her. "You can have this one," he said. Elena accepted it like a gift of gold. "Thank you." Later that afternoon, a sharp voice cut through the calm. "Nathaniel, this is highly inappropriate." Rachel, Oliver's behavioral consultant, stood near the doorway, arms crossed tightly. "You hired a waitress with no credentials to interfere with a carefully designed program." Elena stood slowly. "I'm not interfering," Rachel scoffed. "You don't belong here." Nathaniel stepped forward, his voice quiet but immovable. "She belongs where my son feels safe." Rachel's face hardened. "You're making an emotional decision." "Yes," Nathaniel said. "And for the first time, it's the right one." Rachel gathered her files and left without another word. That evening, as Elena prepared to go, Oliver walked her to the door. "You're coming back," he said. Not a question. "Yes," Elena replied. "Tomorrow." He nodded, satisfied. As the door closed behind her, Nathaniel realized something that unsettled him. For the first time since his wife died, the apartment felt alive. And for the first time, Oliver wasn't just existing. Change didn't arrive loudly. It came in small, almost invisible moments that only someone watching closely would notice. Nathaniel began to see it in the mornings first. Oliver started waking up earlier, not in panic, not in confusion, but with purpose. He would sit at the table waiting, eyes flicking toward the door every few minutes, for Elena. When she arrived, Oliver didn't run or cling. He simply acknowledged her presence with a quiet, "You're here," as if the world had fallen back into alignment. They developed their own rhythm. Elena never imposed structure, but structure appeared anyway. Breakfast became a shared ritual. Oliver chose the plate color. Elena waited until he finished lining up his toast edges before speaking. Silence was allowed. Noise was allowed. Nothing had to be corrected. Nathaniel watched all of this from the edges of the room, a man learning how to be a father for the first time. But peace has a way of attracting resistance. Word spread quickly among Nathaniel's inner circle. Advisors, board members, family friends, people who believed they had a say in everything that touched his life, and none of them approved. "She's manipulating him. She's unqualified. She's a liability." Nathaniel heard it all during a board meeting that week. The polished conference room, the expensive suits, the carefully chosen words, none of it hid the underlying accusation. "You're risking your son's future on sentiment," one director said. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. "No," he replied calmly. "I'm protecting his present." That night he found Elena standing by the window, watching Oliver trace patterns on the glass. "They're not happy about me," she said quietly, without turning around. "They never are when they lose control," Nathaniel replied. Elena hesitated. "If this becomes a fight between your world and mine, Oliver will feel it." Nathaniel was silent for a long moment. Then he said something he hadn't planned to. "Then I'll choose him." The real test came sooner than expected. The following Saturday, Nathaniel hosted a formal charity luncheon at the Penthouse. Donors, investors, social elites, people who expected perfection, obedience, and polished appearances. Rachel returned that afternoon, uninvited but confident, flanked by 2 child specialists. "We're here to observe," she announced, "for Oliver's welfare." Elena stiffened. Oliver froze the moment the room filled with unfamiliar voices. His breathing quickened. His hands went to his ears. Rachel crouched in front of him. "Oliver, sweetheart, look at me." He didn't. "Oliver, you need to engage." The room went silent. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "Please step back," Rachel glared. "You're overstepping." Elena knelt beside Oliver, lowering herself to his level. She didn't touch him. She didn't speak right away. She simply breathed slowly, exaggerated enough for him to see. Oliver mirrored her. 1 breath. 2. The noise faded from his body. Rachel stood abruptly. "This is unacceptable. You're reinforcing avoidance behavior." Nathaniel's voice cut through the room like glass. "You're done." Rachel stared at him. "Excuse me?" "You were hired to help my son," he said, "not dominate him. Pack your things." A murmur rippled through the guests. Rachel left, humiliated. Later, after the guests were gone, Elena sat alone at the kitchen table, hands folded tightly. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," Nathaniel replied, "I did." She looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I've spent my whole life being told I don't belong in rooms like this." Nathaniel shook his head. "You belong in the only room that matters." That night Oliver stood between them, holding one of Elena's blue pencils. "You stayed," he said. "Yes," Elena answered softly. Nathaniel felt something shift inside his chest, not pride, not relief, but something heavier, trust. And outside the Penthouse, forces were already moving, determined to take Elena away. The pressure didn't come all at once. It came quietly, through emails Nathaniel didn't answer, calls he ignored, and meetings he canceled without explanation. People who had once bowed to his authority now questioned his judgment behind closed doors. And the center of it all was Elena. One morning, Nathaniel received a formal notice, a legal review, a concern raised by a board member claiming that an unlicensed, emotionally involved individual was exerting undue influence over his son. Nathaniel read it once, then he folded the paper and walked straight to the kitchen. Elena was helping Oliver arrange his pencils by shade, darkest to lightest. He noticed Nathaniel immediately. "You're early," Oliver said. "Yes," Nathaniel replied, "because we need to talk." Elena looked up, instantly sensing the shift in the air. "They're coming after you," Nathaniel said plainly. "They want you gone." Oliver's hand stopped moving. Elena inhaled slowly. "Then maybe they're right." Nathaniel frowned. "What?" "I don't want to be the reason your life becomes a battlefield," she said quietly. "Oliver feels everything, even things we don't say." Oliver stood up suddenly. His breathing became uneven. "No," he said sharply. "No change." Elena knelt in front of him. "Sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things." He shook his head, eyes shining. "You don't leave." Nathaniel felt the weight of every year he had failed his son press down on him in that moment. That afternoon, the board arrived in person, 4 men, 2 women, lawyers in tailored suits, polite smiles sharpened like knives. They spoke of risk, of optics, of reputation. Nathaniel listened without interruption. Then he stood. "My son is not a brand," he said calmly. He is not an inconvenience to be managed. One of them leaned forward. With respect, this woman has no formal credentials. Nathaniel nodded. Neither did my mother, and she saved my life. Silence fell. He continued, voice steady. Elena stays, or I step down. Shock rippled through the room. You'd abandon the company you built? Someone asked. Nathaniel didn't hesitate. For the child I failed to protect? Yes. The meeting ended shortly after. That night, Elena packed her bag anyway. Nathaniel found her at the door. I won, he said. She shook her head. You sacrificed. I chose, he corrected. Oliver appeared behind them, holding a folded piece of paper. I made something, he said. Elena opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing, 3 figures standing side by side, one tall, one smaller, one in the middle, holding both their hands. Above them, in uneven letters, were words Oliver had practiced for weeks. Safe place. Elena's hands trembled. I don't know how long I can stay, she whispered. Oliver looked up at her. Long enough. Weeks passed. The noise faded. Nathaniel began restructuring his life, not around meetings, but routines, breakfasts, walks, quiet evenings where no one demanded Oliver be anything other than himself. Elena didn't become a miracle cure. She became something better. Consistency. One afternoon, months later, Nathaniel stood at the window again, the same one he once stood at when he felt lost. Behind him, Oliver laughed, not loudly, not wildly, but freely. Elena looked up at Nathaniel. He's okay. Nathaniel shook his head. He's more than okay. For the first time, he understood something no fortune had ever taught him. Power was never control. It was protection. And sometimes the unthinkable act that changes everything is simply staying.